we ask questions like, what truly matters to you? What are your non-negotiables?
It's not just about good looks. It's not just about, how well you dress up. There's so much more deeper things to understand about a long-term relationship.
My dad always used to say to me, if you can get to know someone in 6 months, and if nothing is happening, nothing positive is happening beyond that point, then it's not going anywhere. This episode is sponsored by Skin Nutritional, natural skin solutions to taking care of skin from the inside out. Today, on Tell Me More, I'm joined by Anita and Dipika, founders of Matchbox Global, a premium matchmaking service for global Indians. In a world of dating apps, ghosting, and endless choice, many people feel more disconnected than ever. But for many Indians, wherever they are in the world, relationships are truly still tied to family, culture, values, and long-term partnership. So today, we're moving beyond dating and talking about something deeper, taking a holistic approach to modern matchmaking, focusing not just on introductions, but on emotional well-being, self-awareness, compatibility, and long-term relationship health. So welcome, Anita and Dipika. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. It's really lovely to have you here today.
Thank you for having us both. In fact, Manisha, we were also looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Great. The three of us have most likely in our younger days been introduced to a potential partner by our families. So it's nice to be looking at this topic from the other side of the fence today.
That's true.
So let's get straight into this. So, when we talk about arranged marriage versus modern introductions, how do you define matchmaking today? And how is it different from the traditional arranged marriage?
So, Manisha, when you think of traditional matchmaking, people nowadays think of the traditional being a woman walking in with a cup of teas, serving it all around, sitting down there, and a decision made right then and there. It's so much more different now. It's about two people coming together. It's more about the individuals, what they want, rather than what the families are deciding for them. So it's not going to get decided over one cup of tea. It's a lot more. It's a lot more of them meeting a number of times, looking at, how are they compatible, what their journey is going to be, and a lot more planning and a lot more understanding between each other.
Okay, so what did the traditional systems actually get right that we've lost today? Because arranged marriage wasn't just random, right? It was structured compatibility, like you said. There would be meetings, perhaps meeting 2 or 3 times, as we've seen with sort of cups of coffee, tea over, with extended family present. So how has that changed?
So I think traditional systems understood something that we've forgotten today. They were more about compatibility and less about chemistry. It wasn't about, am I going to enjoy a dinner date with somebody? The elders in the family looked at things like long-term compatibility, upbringing, lifestyle expectations. Several factors were taken into account, and not just whether we would go out on a date and enjoy that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating the traditional style of saying, you've got to meet someone over 2 samosas and make a decision. But I think that nowadays we've gone too far to thinking that, attraction and chemistry is all that matters.
You don't think it matters?
Absolutely does. And I think that's where Dipika and I come in. We do that background that the elders used to do before. And the kids or the clients themselves can focus on that part. But I think both are equally important. And that's why the tradition and modern both work together is what Matchbox is.
Okay. So why do you think there's a return to curated introductions for global Indians? It's not sort of someone from the UK meeting someone from the UK. It's sort of global Indians now, isn't it?
The world has become much smaller because of social media. So people know each other in the same cities. So that's why they are now going and trying to find their real partner outside of their own little comfort zone. So that's where we come in. We are connecting people from all over because we are getting people connecting with us from the US to Dubai, to Singapore, to India, to Dubai, to Africa. I mean, there are so many Indians everywhere. So as matchmakers, I think we can see where people are willing to move countries to settle, and we put them together because of that, and coming out of their own comfort zone. So we help them navigate that much better.
So do you think more people do want to meet people from perhaps different countries, different cultures? Are they willing to move? Or do you think they still prefer meeting someone that they're comfortable with in their domain?
A bit of both. A lot of people are willing to move, but they need someone to guide them, someone to support them through that thought process. And I think that's where they need people like Anita and myself to come in, get them that comfort that, you're not really moving countries, you're moving cultures or anything like that. It's very similar lifestyle, similar upbringing. And yes, if you go and meet that person, it's not going to be a complete 360-degree change in your lifestyle. It's similar. So I think that's why they do want to move, but they want that comfort given by us and not through a dating app, for example, where you can't understand all of these things about the person. Absolutely. I agree with that.
So when you assess compatibility, what truly matters?
I think we look at things about, we ask questions like what truly matters to you? What are your non-negotiables? We look at things like how does somebody communicate? How do they treat people? What are their long-term visions for their future? And of course, we also have to look at things like, are these two people really going to get along?
Okay, so what are the non-negotiables that you've heard that people have spoken about when looking for a partner?
There's so many. It can be as simple as, a lot of it's a very unique traits in Indians, I would say, is someone being a vegetarian and someone not being a vegetarian.
Smoking. We had one which was quite unique, I would say. It was like one of the partners had 9 cats, and the other person was like, I don't want to be near cats.
No, and a dog lover and a cat lover, we introduced them together. So yeah, and the cats and the dogs can't live together. So they got on well, but they couldn't live together. So those became a non-negotiable for them. But more deeper would be things like, they sometimes people want to live independently. They don't want to live with families. A lot of the Indian families still live with their parents. So that's a very unique thing with Indians globally as well. So, women don't want to come and stay with a family because they've heard horror stories. So it's about, making their non-negotiables possibly negotiable by us, or we understand that, yes, they are quite an independent lifestyle, but their work is such at the moment that it will be very difficult for them to adapt to any sort of a family environment. So those can be your non-negotiables.
So, if someone has a checklist, you're just helping them really just check that checklist and then they can focus on the relationship. But do you think people are focusing too much on surface traits like education, looks, lifestyle? What do you feel that they're focusing on or that they want or perhaps they should or shouldn't be doing?
Unfortunately, social media has caused that a lot, and dating apps. It's not just about good looks. It's not just about, how well you dress up. There's so much more deeper things to understand about a long-term relationship and a partner. And people are definitely first getting attracted to those things, and the dating apps are not helping. So yes, they are, and they should not. And that should not be the only thing. Of course, you need to be attracted to the person, but that should not be your full goal. Yeah, your goal.
Because that's very filtered and sort of, it doesn't represent a person in the sort of day-to-day activities, right? What you see, perhaps they have a very curated lifestyle, but they don't know how to communicate. So I suppose that gets missed, and that's where you would check the background, would you?
Absolutely. We check how they communicate, how they treat people, the mutual respect they have for each other. These are important things to build a relationship.
Yeah. So like dating apps can never do background checks on people. They don't understand what their families are. So when you're thinking of swiping right or left, you're not deciding on the basis of everything else. It's just look, and that's it. So that's where we come in, and we try to understand that part, try and understand the background. So it just gives them a sense of comfort.
Yeah, and going back to our previous thing of why, when we meet somebody, we ask those questions. What is your vision for your future? What do you want out of life? How do you want to raise your kids? Where do you want to live? So we know that compatibility already.
Because those are very hard conversations to have, right? In the space of, how you said, when people have arranged marriages, or perhaps if it's a setup by the family, you can't really start asking those questions in front of perhaps your parents sitting there or extra family members, because it can get quite awkward, I suppose. So what are the non-negotiables for Matchbox when people join?
There's so many.
I think I would look at how a person communicates, very important, how they treat other people. And I would try to figure out what is their way of dealing with conflict. And also to look for that in their partner, right? How do partners act when they're stressed? when they're tired, when they don't get their way, you know? How do people behave? Because that says a lot about somebody. How do they respect people around them? How do they respect people below them? You know, these are very telling of someone's personality. I mean, you can negotiate where you live. You can negotiate how you travel. You can negotiate the color of your kitchen walls. You can't negotiate character.
Absolutely. I think there's such a big difference between personality and character, right? Because character is
Absolutely.
something that you only get to know over time. But I
Absolutely.
suppose if you're helping a client to do that research, then you're cutting down that time in essence.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Truly.
So why is finding a partner more complex for Indians living globally? What are their restrictions or their hurdles?
You see, Indians everywhere, each country comes with its different kind of thinking culture, the way they've been brought up. I mean, the way the US Indians think is the way the UK Indians live are very different. So I think we need to understand the global Indian and how they have been brought up, how they think a life with a partner is. You know, they may be brought up very independently, not with family, or with living with family, but very traditional in their mindset. They don't go to India often enough. They may not be connected to India at all. They may be Indians, but they probably have not been to India in years. They don't have family back there anymore. So their connection with India is very different to a lot of Indians in the UK, for example, who go back to India 5 times a year. So you need to understand all of those kind of things about them and to see whether they can then adapt and adopt their each other's lifestyles. So I think that's where the challenge comes for us, to understand how they have been living abroad and how connected they are and how truly are Indian they are.
So do you think culture, religion, and family expectations still influence decisions? Because, two people can have their own values. We talked about character, maybe emotional regulation comes into that. Then it's not just the emotional regulation of the two people, it's the emotional regulation of other family members that might be living within that family structure. So that leads to family alignment. And then, the life vision of two people. And then perhaps the extended family have their own vision as well. So how does that all come together? Because that's all quite complex.
Yeah. I think that these days for this younger generation, religion and culture is less about restrictions as it used to be. It's more about identity. People want to think about, are you going to fit into the family traditions? What are family traditions that we would like to continue? What is it that we want to pass on to our children? How do we want to spend, say, Diwali? Is an elder member of the family, is a parent going to come and live with us? So these are sort of more cultural traditions and family way of living rather than, I would say, restrictions.
Okay, so do you think in the modern world then people are trying to balance that independence and tradition, and how far are they getting it right?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of our clients are not shunning tradition. What they want is the freedom to choose how to engage with tradition. They totally value their independence. They want a modern relationship. They want independence, but at the same time, they truly value traditions. They want a mix of both.
Yes.
It's not tradition versus independence. It's living a life respecting both.
Totally.
And I like that because I think that's so important, because I suppose the whole purpose of having this service, like you said, it's to find maybe if someone's in the US and they want someone who's Indian, but perhaps is as independent as them and maybe has the same traditional values, then they might look within the US. Or if they want someone with more traditional values, then they'll go perhaps and explore that with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's look at your approach, because your process is all about self-discovery, relationship coaching, the holistic prep, confidence, lifestyle, mindset. It's a very curated research, right? And then there's the post-match relationship support. And I think if I'm not mistaken, you did astrological compatibility as well.
For those who want it.
For those who want it. Okay. So how important is all of that? And starting from the self-discovery process, why is that such a big part of what you do?
So more and more when we meet people, I think Anita and me find that people sometimes don't know themselves what they are and what their traits are. So we've met someone, for example, who said, I'm very flexible. But as the conversation went along, we actually found out that he's the most inflexible person that we know, and it's for us to make them understand that, so that when they meet a partner, they realize how rigid they are. So they should expect so much flexibility from their partner as well. So it's and the fact that they need to understand that they need to be flexible. They believe they are, but they are not. So a self-discovery call is about not just us knowing them, but they knowing who they are as well. And I think accordingly then decide whether they are actually very confident or there is some, a reason for them not being what they can be, their best self. So there could be some past experiences that they've had that has made them bitter or not comfortable with, committing or commitment phobias, things like that. So I think in that whole self-discovery session that we have with each of our clients, we insist that we must talk to them. And that's the biggest reason is to get to understand that about them. We ask them to answer certain questions that is very designed to get to know these parts of them and then help them through this. It's not just knowing it and, oh, that's it. What we and then try to do is we try and see if they need coaching. If they need it, we offer it. If they do believe in astrology, yes, believe in it. We also accept and understand that some people absolutely don't believe in it. Fine, let's not go into it because we don't want to start creating new unnecessary, navigation points. So I think it's all about adapting to what they are looking for, but also trying to make them understand what they should be looking for.
Sometimes they haven't even thought about those questions. They haven't even thought about, like where do I want to live? Simple things. How do I want to, what is my future vision? We just kind of make them think about those questions.
And I think I like the point where you said that you would give them some sort of coaching, because I think sometimes when people get married and they start sort of having therapy or coaching after, this is a way really for them to sort of come to the table as
Absolutely.
a complete person, because traditionally there was no self-discovery, right? It was all about accept me as I am. And this is what you're signing up for within my family. And
Yes.
there was no self-discovery. It was all about conforming and adapting. So this approach is slightly different. And I'm just wondering, would there be a conflict then? Because when they have this self-discovery moment, because you're not looking at personality anymore, now you're looking at someone's character, right? That's their character. Would they need then someone who's a little bit more flexible? Because if they're quite rigid and then you have two people who are quite rigid coming together, that's a clash, right?
Very much so, yes.
Absolutely. But I think it's very important to make somebody also sort of self-aware. I think the coaches are not trying to put blame on anyone. They're not trying to make them see that something is wrong with them. But I think awareness helps a lot in the way somebody reacts. If I'm aware that I'm rigid, I think I automatically think that maybe I need to be more flexible. It makes me see that I need to be open to someone else's point of view. If I'm somebody who doesn't communicate a lot and I expect someone to just know what's on my mind, which is a lot of how a lot of arguments between partners start, or you didn't do that, or you didn't do this. I think it's understanding that actually I never communicated it. So how would you know?
And I think I suppose it's easier coming from you, right? Because you're coming and looking at a clean slate and you're not related in any way. It's not for you to say, well, my brother or my sister or my son is perfect. And, that's when you talk about self-awareness, you're actually giving them a different perspective to what they had already. So I think that's a very interesting point. And I think that's, that part of modern matchmaking is so important, because I think people 20, 30 years ago thought, well, I'm great and this is, take it or leave it, right? So,
People still think they're great.
I agree. So, and I think I like that part about making them aware, because then they sort of question themselves. And if they want to change, then they can.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people who come, they look very confident, but they're actually very vulnerable inside.
Absolutely.
And there are people who start very shy and you realize that they are they know their mind very well. So it's about all of this, it's so much more than just knowing a person.
Yes, ultimately, two people have to live with each other. You're not marrying a CV, you're marrying a person, a character. And it's important to put those together.
Character and their family and their characters
Absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So why does matchmaking not end just at that introduction process? What lies beyond that?
Because introductions is like the easiest part. I can make 10 introductions today. Apps make introductions, I think, per second. That's just the start. That's like a preface, because people need navigation. You introduce two people and I can tell you they need navigating sometimes the smallest of things. It's like who organizes the date, who pays the bill, who makes the first call or the first text after? What happens then? How do we organize the second date? Do we travel over? Who travels over if it's a long distance relationship? There's so many things to navigate. It's like, it's not even chapter one, the introduction. That's the easiest part.
Even the young people, you feel, okay, they need more navigation because they've not done this enough. We dealing with 40-year-olds, I mean, they are unsure, and
Yeah.
they've done this time and time again, and yet they don't know how to navigate this. We just had a call the other day. Should I ask to invite him, or should I say I'm coming? I mean, to a different country, and it's just one of those. Or should we meet at a middle point? I mean, is this too advanced for me to say come and meet my family? Does that mean I'm ready? Or those are little questions, but it's important because you don't know how their conversations have gone. So it's just navigating through all of that. It's
Sometimes it could also just be managing expectations. People have expectations of the other person. We just need to manage that. So there's so much more to do after just introducing people.
So you're taking the anxiety out of that so that they can actually just be themselves and get to know one another. Because there is a lot of anxiety when you get to know someone initially, isn't it? I mean, we've all heard the terms ghosting, breadcrumbing, situationships. So do you think these behaviors are a symptom of something deeper? Because I feel sometimes too much choice and the lack of consistency in a sort of a fast-paced world where everything is instant. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think these modern behaviors, ghosting, breadcrumbing, situationships, they're all a factor of uncertainty. People are just terrified of making a wrong decision, right? So they don't make a decision. They don't want to hurt somebody. And they're also terrified of exposing their own vulnerabilities. So what do people do? They don't make any decision. So they don't respond. They don't say anything because they just stay in limbo because they don't want to make the wrong decision. And actually, it's quite an irony that not wanting to create discomfort actually creates greater discomfort for everybody involved. So much.
Absolutely. So do you think choice has made people avoidant, maybe?
Absolutely, because I think apps have created this false sense of choice. Relationships require you to spend time to get to know somebody. People are making choices by looking at a photo. People are making choices by meeting somebody once. The happiest couples I know are people who took time to spend with each other, to get to know each other, to understand. If you keep looking over the shoulder and thinking, I can find the next person, you're never going to know what you could have had with the person who's in front of you.
So when you make that introduction, do you, for example, would you just introduce one person at a time so that they can actually focus on that one person?
Absolutely. That is exactly what we do.
We actually encourage them to meet at least a couple of times before they just decide on the first meeting. Especially if they're in the same city, we encourage them to meet again at least 3 times before they say yes and no. Unless the very first time they are 100% uncomfortable, both of them come back and tell us, no, it didn't work. It was just horrible. But then we ask them why. We asked them why it did not work. And if we feel it was because there was a lot of awkwardness because they were first time ever getting together to meet each other, as in going on a date for the first time, then definitely encourage them to meet again.
Would you ever attend the dates with them? I'm just wondering.
You've not done that?
No,
But we put them together. We did go, I did go and meet them together, put them together in a room, and then, of course, said hello to both of them and then just left. But not often enough. No.
Yeah.
Because it's all over the world, right? I mean, we can't be everywhere.
So 3 times connecting before actually deciding whether they want to date one another, whether they want to continue to get to know one another?
Yes.
At least. I think that's important.
I think that's a good idea. And how long would that whole process take? Like, how often have you found, like, does it take from start to finish? From, what is the ideal sort
We
of
have people meet, people meet 3 or 4 times and sort of say, this is it. But we have people who are
6 months
Yeah.
and come back and then said, no, it's not working out. We've had someone 1.5 years almost.
Yeah.
And they
And
still
still
haven't,
going.
they still haven't made up their minds. But they do believe it's working. But then there are some who are meeting multiple people, not through us.
Yeah.
But
They're still on the dating apps and they're, still meeting through friends. So we can't control what's outside of Matchbox.
So there's no cutoff time, because my dad always used to say to me, if you can get to know someone in 6 months, and if nothing is happening, nothing positive is happening beyond that point, then it's not going anywhere. So I'm just curious to know.
So, Monisha, it depends. I mean, if you're living in different countries and you've only managed to meet a few times in that 6 months, then 6 months not maybe enough. But if you're in the same city and you've been meeting often enough for 6 months, then yes, you absolutely come to know, I think, by 6 months, that whether it's going to go to a point of getting married or it's going to be more friendship, that you're getting comfortable with the person, but it's not maybe a marriage you see with each other. But it's because we are dealing with all time zones, all kinds of people. Sometimes it takes longer. So you can't really pinpoint and just say 6 months and you've got to decide. No.
So if someone came back to you and said, I think we have a blossoming friendship, Do you think that's not a good foundation for marriage? Because someone might, we often hear that, no, I like them as a friend, but nothing more. But isn't that actually a better foundation? I'm just wondering.
So, yeah, I mean, we absolutely
Yes.
think friendship is the key, but I think there is so much, you need to be also attracted a little bit. And I think the initial attraction has to come, then the friendship follows for a marriage. I mean, friendship, you may not be attracted to the person, but you respect each other's likes, dislikes, you find common grounds to meet. That's different. But there has to be a little bit of attractiveness as well. So I do believe that you need a mix of both.
Okay. So, what does a healthy relationship dynamic look like today then? In an ideal marriage, a relationship keeps evolving. So, what should it look like from the start, and how do you see it evolving?
I think in the world of mobile phones, where we've stopped communicating to each other in a face to face, I think the biggest thing is to have communication, a smooth communication throughout, an open communication, people to understand each other by talking things through. I think that is the key. If you're not able to communicate to each other clearly, then it's never going to be a good relationship, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. And what does emotional maturity look like in practice? Because to me, it's having those hard conversations, taking accountability,
Absolutely.
acceptance. Because
Absolutely. I think that it's less glamorous than what social media makes it out to be. It is having some really uncomfortable conversations. It's being able to communicate your needs to your partner without expecting them to know it. But it's also understanding your partner's needs. And it's not shutting down when something goes wrong. It's having a process for resolving conflicts. Emotionally mature people don't avoid conflict. They sit down and resolve it without making it a battleground. And that's how you create trust. You talk to each other, you have a conversation. I follow on what Dipika said. Communicating is so important. Taking accountability for your own actions, your own words. This is so important because if you don't do that, you don't create trust. And most relationships, all relationships, are built on trust.
And I think emotional maturity is also to give each other space, when to give each other space. I think it's important to value the other person's independence. And yet, when you're together, you value the time together.
Absolutely.
And I think communication is good, but you also should know when to communicate. Certain things sometimes needs to be left for a certain time and be brought up as a topic to discuss at the right time. So I think emotional maturity is to understand that the person is now ready to discuss this, right now needs space. And I think that's with us on a daily basis as well. Don't you see that when we are with even, with our own family. So I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point because I think that's, where relationships can really break down, right? Whether it's 1 year into the relationship, 5 years into the relationship, it's that whole sort of emotional maturity and respecting one another's space, like you said. So what should people be prioritizing if they want something lasting?
If they're communicating well, they've had a bit of initial attraction, they have to make sure it doesn't just stay there, that it develops into a very beautiful friendship, because that's the most lasting thing in the relationship. You said that before, and I think what I would like to say is that yes, get your initial chemistry going, all of that is great, but it should follow on to become a beautiful friendship together, because that's the most lasting thing.
Because, you can have chemistry, but then you also have to have relationships that are consistent, right? And then stability, I feel it's so important, and nervous system safety, because I feel like if you're in that state of anxiety with someone, then that's maybe a red flag, right? That something's not right in the relationship.
Also understanding that, life is not going to go like this. It's going to be up and down. So you got to know that there is going to be a time when you got to, brave the down to enjoy the ups together. So I think you need to know that. So yeah, you can't just, expect it to be always smooth with that person. And I think that is also key to understanding that in a relationship, you've got to be able to navigate all of those, life that throws at you.
So when we take into account sort of the extended family, do you have those discussions with them as well? Do you vet them as well to see that the person that you're introducing is safe in that environment? Because after all, if it's an arranged marriage, would you be looking at the other members of the family that they're living with? Like what's that process?
I think we do get a sense of the other people of the family. It is always hard for us to tell whether someone's going to be safe. I think you discover things about your partner even 20 years down the line. So that's something that only two people know while meeting each other constantly. We don't meet people to an intimate level for over years, right? So I think we get a sense of the background of the family, the upbringing, the character. We also get most people through word of mouth, through personal introductions. So we have a sense of who they are. A lot of the time, the parents call us, right? So we actually get to speak to the parents first. Yeah. Especially when the people we are matching are usually younger, the parents are the ones who approach us. And then we speak to the person themselves, the candidate. So it all depends again. If it's a much older person, I think we concentrate more on the person. Absolutely. Yeah. Because that's what it's going to be like.
Yeah. Okay. So, we've had this whole conversation about marriage, but the word love hasn't come into it yet. How do those two fit together in arranged marriages and in the modern context?
I think in the modern context, you fall in love with the partner over time. It's not that initial attraction that people say, oh, I fell in love with at first sight. It may not be that, but I think you fall in love with who the person is. You get to know them over time and you love their character, the person they are, the way they treat you, the way they react, the way they deal with hard situations. You fall in love with a person over time.
Totally. I think love at first sight may not last. I mean, that's the problem. I think
That's actually hormones. Butterflies in your stomach is actually hormones.
I always say that as well as a nutritionist. It's definitely, I know that that's hormones at play and nothing more.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah, I think it takes about 3 to 6 months for the hormones to settle, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when you actually know whether you're compatible with someone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. So thank you, Dipika and Anita, for this amazing conversation. It's been so thoughtful and really important for both individuals looking to find a life partner and their families. And I hope that this conversation can give some people some ideas and, maybe they'll pick up the phone and get in touch with you to do some research for them. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And I've really enjoyed this actually, Manisha. Thank you for, asking the right kind of questions as well to us because even I think it's important to communicate.
Yeah. And saying the one thing about love that you said, I'd like to say that love isn't about looking into each other's eyes and staring at each other, because that's not what life is going to be about. It's being a team and looking together in the same direction.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, follow, subscribe, and save it for later. See you next time on Tell Me More. This episode is sponsored by Skin Nutritional, natural skin solutions to taking care of skin from the inside out.